the knee. Blood in the streets of town of Chicago. Let all the rising following me.
The Doors, Peace Frog off their great album, Morrison Hotel. Could have easily titled that song Blood, but I love the imagery of the title Peace Frog. Somewhat provocative, like what's it all about? But Peace Frog, dig the song. It's probably 1A of my favorite songs of the Doors, with LA Woman's probably the other one that I would point to, but they have a lot of awesome songs, of course. But Jim Morrison, I mean the Doors in general, but you know, it's hard to talk about the Doors without kind of focusing on Jim Morrison a little bit. Very influential, probably like the first rock crooner, I would say. Like he kind of takes some of those lounge singer traditions, 30s, 40s, early 50s, and it puts it into a rock context. Being in that band, the Doors, with the musicians that he was with, allowed him to do that, and I'll explain. So, you know, you had John Densmore, very dynamic, intricate drummer, very proficient, really able to, and I will just say this as these thoughts come into my head, like for any rock band, I think you start with the singer, and then the next most important element is the drummer. Because those are the two things that people really connect with, I think. And of course, this is all very subjective and just my opinion for what it's worth. But, you know, the rhythm, it's, you know, goes back to our caveman roots. It's just in our DNA, like to recognize rhythm. And if the rhythm isn't right, the music's never going to work. And then the singer, or the vocalist, it's just, the human voice is probably after the rhythm is probably the first thing that people really connect with in popular music. So you had John Densmore, phenomenal drummer. Then you got Robbie Krieger, he wasn't banging out like super loud riffs. He was a very songy, or he is, he's still alive, very songy guitar player. Played with his fingers a lot, so his playing didn't rely on loud riffs, and I'll get into why that's important in my opinion again. And then Ray Manzarek, of course, really the musical architect for the band. His keyboard playing fills in a lot of space, but again, it's an instrument that doesn't really clash with the voice or the vocal like guitar does. Like the guitar and the vocal are always kind of competing for sonic space. The keyboard just kind of it just blends a lot more and leaves a lot more space for the vocal. Again, I'll get into why that's important. So then you get to Jim Morrison. Like I said, I think he was the first rock crooner. He very unironically did what he did. I mean, he in a very boss move, gave himself his own nickname. Well, he had a lot of nicknames, but the nickname that has kind of persevered is
The Lizard King.
I don't know this for sure, but I know that it has been said that he gave himself that own nickname. And if you can give yourself your own nickname and not be mocked for that, you're on the right track. He was kind of embraced with that nickname. So Jim Morrison, baritone singer, somewhat, like I said, he did his thing very unironically. He seemed very committed to what he was doing and the way that he did it. And his delivery was somewhat dramatic, somewhat theatrical. Like I could see him being the lead in his High School Musical singing Shenandoah very convincingly. But Morrison, what do I want to say about him? Oh yeah, so why the Doors with those musicians were the perfect band for him, for some of those reasons. Like he didn't have to be a tenor, say like a Robert Plant. and sing over the top of everything. Like he could sing in his range very easily and be heard in that band and in that context. And you know, sometimes it's not considered real cool to like Jim Morrison. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Doors, but they are somewhat polarizing. And I think one of the reasons for that is Jim Morrison had a vocal range that's very accessible. He's not like Robert Plant. I mean, you're not going to roll out of bed and be able to wail like Robert Plant or Freddie Mercury or name Sting, any other great rock singer that you can think of that had to sing over loud guitars. With Jim Morrison, like I said, he kind of weaved in and out of what his band was doing, which with the players he was with, and the way they played allowed him to do that. And but with his range, it's more accessible to like just Joe Schmo who decides they want to be a vocalist to try to sing like Jim Morrison than say Robert Plant. But it's one thing to imitate someone and another thing to be able to do what they do. And not many people do a convincing facsimile of Jim Morrison. Like two guys that I can think of that I really like as singers that kind of had that Jim Morrison thing, and I have no idea if Jim Morrison was a big influence on either one of these guys, but I think of guys like Ian Astbury and Scott Weiland kind of had that Morrison thing to their vocal a little bit. But the rock landscape is littered with people that tried to be like Jim Morrison and just couldn't really pull it off. You could say the same thing for a guy like Eddie Vedder, where it's just like he had a thing, or he has a thing. Again, he's still alive, still doing his thing. Where it's he had a style, he had a emotion that he kind of ties into, or he has a style, he has an emotion that he kind of ties into. And again, he sings in a range that is accessible. But again, the rock landscape is littered with people that try to imitate Eddie Vedder and can't do an Eddie Vedder. Just like there's lots of people that have tried to do Robert Plant and they fail at it. But I would say that's, in the degree of difficulty, that's harder to do. So yeah, Doors, Peace Frog, great song in their vast catalog. Oh, the other thing about Jim Morrison that's interesting, I mean, obviously that band and the time frame that they were together, and you see a lot of this with a lot of the bands from the late 60s and early 70s where they're just very prolific. And I mean, you think about it, like Jim Morrison, he's part of the 27-year-old club. He died, he's 27. Just like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Brian Jones from Rolling Stones. I mean, what these folks accomplished in a pretty short time period is pretty astounding. But thanks, Doors, for the Peace Frog. Dig it. Peace.